Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison. Now, I've gone ahead and changed my introduction to including my real name. Now, I'm a little bit irritated about that, but I've been having these conversations with some professionals, and what they're telling me is essentially Orphanlast will never appear in the credits of a movie. So if I were to help animate a timeless classic similar to something like Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast or something like that, Orphanlast will never be an option. Regardless of how common pseudonyms happen to be inside of, the whole filming industry in general, no. Orphanlast will never appear for animators. I mean, it doesn't matter if there was an actor back in the 80s and 90s who went by the name Rip Torn. I mean, I guarantee you there is no man that was ever born with parents that called their children Rip Torn. So, the thing is what I'm afraid of at this point is this, basically. I'm afraid that I'm going to basically create a bunch of content on my channel going by Orphanlast, and then eventually I'm going to start working on some professional stuff, and Orphanlast will never appear in the credits. Instead, it will be Skylar Madison. So unless I'm letting people know who I am, what my real name is, then people will never make the association. I could say, hey guys, yeah, this is Orphanlast, yeah, guys, I helped make this cartoon, go watch it. And then people look through the credits, they don't see Orphanlast. Skylar Madison just breezes by with all the rest of the names, and they're like, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I kind of don't believe that you worked on this project. And so this splits up my audience. There's the group of people that happen to know me for my real name, and then there's the group of people that know me for Orphanlast, and I don't like that. So I guess Orphanlast is just going to be a brand name. It's just, one of the reasons why this bothers me is because, one of the things that what the professionals have been saying is, well, you should have been thinking ahead. You should have been thinking about the future. And, that's actually what I was doing, ever since the internet first appeared, you show up in schools and such like that, and they instruct you never release your real name online, unless, of course, you're on Facebook, and I don't know what the exception, what makes Facebook the exception, but or on your Google account, make sure that you use your real name on your Google account and such like that. I don't know. I've tried to keep a little bit of anonymity, and so nowadays with the animation industry, nowadays it usually starts out with a bunch of kids or just a kid starting to animate at around age 13 or something, and then starts posting videos on YouTube. And by the time the kid reaches 18, people are like, you want to work here? That sort of thing. And I'm older than 18. I'm 32, but it's only until recently that I've seen free animation tools that are worth using. And so that's exactly what I've started to strive for, the free animation stuff. There is no excuse for why you're not learning how to animate if all the tools at your disposal for making an animation are free. As long as you have a computer, you can animate. And so I just started animating and then decided, hey, yeah, I might as well just make a channel about this because, I do know how to draw, and, I'm always interested in studying more stuff with artwork, and, it was kind of like this revitalization of my childhood dreams. And nowadays it's amazingly simple to get published. I remember being in high school and thinking, wow, just to be published, it was a dream of mine. Now it's as easy as clicking a button. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be publishing yourself. And so that's, I don't know, it is frustrating. So my name is Skylar Madison, and I am Orphanlast and all that good stuff. So I guess there's no going back now. The anonymity is gone. Now, I swear, guys, this video is 40 minutes long. The play speed that you're watching is 12 times the speed in which I actually was moving. So normally it's around 6, 7, 800 times, no, 6, 7 to 8 times faster than regular speed. I sped this up to 12 times the speed. If I sped it up too much, you guys wouldn't be able to understand what's going on. I swear I'm not trying to make the longest videos in history. I'm just, you know, I got a lot of work done this week, and I'm sharing it with you guys. Now, you know, I named this series Path Back to Opentoonz. I'm actually adjusting it to Road Back to Opentoonz, just simply because people search for the word road a heck of a lot more than path, and so just to get the get a few more search results to be more effective, people can find my videos a little bit better. And so I'll be changing the title of this series from Path Back to Opentoonz to Road Back to Opentoonz. Anyways, even though I named this series that, I'm going to release another video today, and that video is going to be about it's going to be about my intro. If you haven't noticed, my videos have always started out abruptly and ended rather abruptly, and it's something that's annoyed me for quite a while. Now, that doesn't really say, oh yeah, the videos are unprofessional in any way, I don't think. I mean, I just started out on YouTube. This is my first year. You know, I'm allowed, you know, a little bit of leeway. You know, I started out with a watermark. You know, I bought that. I started out with a crappy graphics tablet. I bought a brand new one that I'm pretty confident with. This is really not. This is a really nice graphics tablet. You know, I found I didn't know very much about linear perspective, and that there's of course more to learn about curvilinear perspective. Some of it I still know that I haven't shared with you. I'll still provide even more tutorials and new techniques about curvilinear perspective pretty soon here. And so I purchased, since there is more content, that the new techniques or more techniques that I'm not aware of, I bought a book about it, and it just happens to be in a different language. But it's the most elegant book I've ever seen that talks about both linear perspective and curvilinear perspective. I'm currently getting it translated, and this is, like, the book itself wasn't cheap, and so you know, I'm working on a lot of professional level stuff, and it's all about, hey, when do I get to find time for all this? I have a full-time job, I have a lot of stresses in my life, and then I have this blog on top of it, and of course I love the blog. There's no way I'm ever going to let this thing go, because I love doing this. I love doing this. Like, even if I got hired as a full-time animator, I would still come home every day and provide you guys with tutorials, like, pure and simple. But anyways, yeah, this is I'm going to be working on an introduction. Now, what I'm going to be using in the next video is 5-point curvilinear perspective. And this will allow me to look at one door, like one end of a hallway, and look at the other end of a hallway. And so this is actually within the one video, the next video that's coming out this week. It's or today rather. It's nearly complete, in my opinion. Like, all the line work is pretty much completed in the video that's going to be released today, alongside with this one. And so you know, I might just start working in Opentoonz before this Road Back to Opentoonz series is complete. I plan on doing a few experimental techniques on my intro, basically. I've already done some experimental stuff with the background already, but I'm not really going to talk about it because it's experimental stuff, and some of it didn't really work out the way I thought it would. But in the end, it's turning out to be a really nice image. heck, this Road Back to Opentoonz video or series, the background. In this video, there comes a point where this background just starts to pop. There comes a point where it's like, whoa, this is starting to look exactly the way I wanted it to. And it's exciting for me to actually see this background that started out looking like crap slowly develop into something more and more like what I would expect New York City to look like, even though I've never been there. Or a place like Chicago or something like that. But anyways, like, I've never worked with textures. With like basically you take a photograph of something that has a specific texture. Let's say you're drawing a desk. Well, you go over to a desk in real life, and you get your camera. Like you literally grab a camera, whether it's your smartphone or a DSLR or a point-and-shoot camera, and you get it at a 90 degrees to the texture that you're wanting to capture. You take your picture, and then you load up the picture on a separate layer inside of your drawing, and then you turn it to black and white, and then you change the blending mode, and then you kind of overlay it. You kind of also transform it to fit the perspective and everything. And once you do that, it's just this texture there, and then you can kind of paint on top of it. And so that's an experimental thing that I'd like to work on with my background video first, before I do it in my Path Back to Opentoonz video. But you know, it seems one of the experiments that I did with my with this video that you're going to see after this one. Gosh, I'm talking about a different video and not this one. I'm just so interested in my intro. I really am, because it's just like, I've told some people what I want my intro to be. And I've explained all the action that's going to take place with it, and they look at me. These are people that I know in person. They look at me and they're like, "I really like that idea. That's really cool." So it's gotten me excited. So yeah, yeah. You know what? I'll talk about that video when I'm actually recording the audio for that video. So as you can see inside of this video, I'm using a reference. It's right next to the color wheel, just to the left of it, and you know, I'm kind of going off of that. By and large, I kind of deviate away from it a little bit, but by and large, I'm pretty loyal to it, and it didn't really, you know, it took me a while to make this other building. But it didn't take me nearly as long as anything else, and I'm really happy about that too. Just within a day, I got this thing looking good, and it really felt like the reason why I decided to put this building in here is because I have 3 buildings in this background. I have this warehouse, I have this clothing store, and then another store and an alleyway. And so it's just like, well, I want this to kind of feel like New York City. I at least need one more building and maybe some sort of, you know, it's kind of hard to describe, just the illusion of a city out in the background. The thing is, near the warehouse, I wanted there to be a really big parking lot, primarily because it's a warehouse. Warehouses tend to have, like, or at least they should have, really big, you know, parking lots. And you know, not all warehouses, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be considered a warehouse. Even it could just be an industrial sort of place where people go in and work on, like, a steel factory or something, and then, you know, trucks come and then they open up these garage doors and load up the trucks, that sort of thing. So, but the park, I remember going to a distribution center. I even worked at a distribution center for a short period of time. and I couldn't believe just how huge the parking lot was. It was enormous, and I'm pretty sure it's because, you know, semi-trailers, they have to be able to maneuver around there, and, you know, it got me thinking of a big semi-trailer or semi-truck, basically trying to spin out and, you know, try to do donuts. That'd be awesome to see. One of my all-time favorite fantasies that I'd love to see. I mean, I don't care. Like, I really don't want there to be anybody inside of two semis doing this. I like just put a remote controller inside of it and like control these two semi-trailers going full speed, maximum speed that they can possibly go, and have them both going downhill so that it increases their velocity, and they have a full load, 2 trailers in the back, and just head-on collision, and just watch and film the mayhem. I've always wanted to see that. And, you know, The Matrix Reloaded, I think that's the second one. It doesn't count. It really doesn't count. I want to see it for real. But anyways, yeah, so the warehouse, there's not any buildings out there because the parking lot is so huge. And so I decided, well, there needs to be some buildings out there, or at least the illusion of there being buildings out there somewhere. And so I kind of make what kind of feels like a matte, kind of like a matte painting out in the background, I guess. I'm not really quite sure how to phrase it. I know there's a specific term for it, but anyways, you guys will see it and be able to understand what it is that I'm talking about. One of the things that I noticed is with the fire escape stuff that I was doing with this, it really didn't work out with my sketch. It didn't really pose a problem that my sketch wasn't very accurate. But I'm finding that, you know, I don't necessarily need to draw a grid, and I don't necessarily need to have a freehand sketch process. I'm finding that, you know, Krita feels comfortable enough to where I can have at least, or at maximum, about 2 assistant tools that are fisheye perspective, and then one that happens to be a parallel ruler, and just use those 3 basically. And generally, I'm with the newest updated version of Krita, 3 point whatever, it's really it really works pretty well now, and I'm really happy to see that. So in my next video this week, you'll see that I completely I kind of sort of completely skipped the freehand drawing process. Anyway, so yeah, actually, I think this is the point. Yeah, this is the point where I'm starting to work with the fire escape. So I have only 2 fisheye perspective assistants out at any given time right now. So even though this is 4-point cylindrical perspective, I'm only working with 2 and kind of moving them around when I need to, moving the assistants around when I need to. And so I'm only finishing everything section by section. Now I can understand, you know, I can't understand having a freehand session with at least a drawing this big, like just sketching it out with freehand and everything, just so that you can lay everything out. But I earlier said, hey, you know, I think it'd be a good idea to work with a thumbnail and then blow it up. You know, I'm actually not taking that stance anymore. I actually don't like that idea. I've done that recently with fisheye perspective, And the tools on Krita do not allow for a transition from a thumbnail to, you know, a full-scale image. Like, you're going to wind up... there's no way that you can select your assistant tool and just free transform the assistant tool, and pressing shift and everything, and or select multiple assistant tools and freehand, you know, like basically Control T and transform it, press shift and click and drag and everything. You have to manually transform and blow up these fisheye perspective assistant tools. And so what I found in the process of doing that, it just doesn't work out. Like, it doesn't work the same as how it worked out on your thumbnail. So your thumbnail is it's not completely worthless. I mean, it helps you visualize a little bit, but it doesn't help well enough, because it poses different sort of decisions that you didn't have when you were working with your thumbnail. And so that's frustrating. So here I am working on the fire escape, and this took some time to work on, and yeah, it was a little bit tedious, but I really did not feel frustrated about the whole experience that I had, having to redraw a lot of the stuff. It just came off as natural to me. I already had some practice, just, you know, building these. I mean, I think I've rebuilt these fire escapes at least 3 or 4 times already, and the big pitfall, the big problem with the sketch, the freehand sketch that I did, is pure and simply I used the transform and warping tools instead of Krita in order to try to get it to work, and it just didn't work out. That it's even the size of these fire escapes basically proved to be too large for the warp tool to work with perspective. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to start warping things, you need to keep in mind that by the time that you pull out your assistant tools and everything, there's going to be some major adjustments made down the road, and it's just not feasible to keep everything that's inside of your sketch. Now, it's okay if all that you're doing with your sketch is just laying down the idea, and it's not like a 100% guide. Just as long as you're not so sloppy with a sketch that you wind up being confused with all of your lines, like, whoa, which one's, like, what am I supposed to do? And you know, you don't want to get confused, or find out later on down the road that an idea that you had with your freehand sketch just simply won't work with the assistant tools because you were just being too sloppy. But if you're just trying to lay down the idea, yeah, you know, you can go ahead and use transform and warp and just splat it in there, and then once you pull out the assistant tools, just be like, okay, so this is just a general guide area, and just kind of get it done rather perfectly as you're doing the using the assistant tools and such like that. And that's pretty much what I did here. It really is. It's pretty much everything that I did here. I really wanted to get this fire escape looking good. I'm not really even quite sure exactly everything that I have in mind with the animation that I'm going to animate here. I mean, I already have a few things go down where he jumps through the window and then he starts attacking the cops, and I have a few other ideas above and beyond that. But I've toyed with these other ideas, like maybe a helicopter attacks him or something. But, you know, a helicopter, it involves a lot of shifting perspective, especially as it starts to maneuver and starts to kind of turn around and move and adjust its position. And trying to keep the structure of the helicopter consistent throughout that entire time sounds a little intimidating. Now, I might just, I might just do it just simply because it's a challenge. But, the thing is like, I don't want to overburden myself with too much, and that sort of thing. And here I am, nearly finished with the fire escape, and that's exciting. Just finishing a few bits of the staircase and everything. I remember at the very end here of doing the fire escape, I forgot to do the bottom staircase on the bottommost fire escape, and so that's how this why I'm still doing this at this point, at this stage. So yeah. Anyways, I'll speak up as soon as I can actually think of something to say. Okay, see how the image is just starting to kind of just pop. It starts to really look good at this point. And there comes, I believe there's this one point where I decided to just kind of start panning around really slowly so that you guys could actually kind of see what the effect is, as a curvilinear perspective is more of a swivel action. As you pan around the canvas, it creates the illusion of a swivel. Linear perspective is just a panning action, and that's it. Now, if you guys have ever used the assistant tool inside of Krita, you know that as you get closer and closer to the center or the middle areas of the assistant tool, it can get really difficult to get your lines to follow the right assistant. It really can. And so you need to really be on your A game, observing, making sure that your lines are going to the correct assistant. I was never really happy with this building. For me, it just seemed like, well, it's another building, and really the goal inside of this animation, I do know this. I do know that I want my character to run down the alleyway. Now, the camera's not going to be panning all the way to the right, so whatever it is that I'm doing here is fluff. It's just extra work that might not be exposed to what's within the frame in the final animation. So very little of this particular building that I'm working on right now is actually going to be seen. So it's not like I'm really too invested in what is going on with this building. The only reason why I decided, hey, yeah, I'm gonna do all of this is because I'm toying with the idea of having him kind of bounce off the wall of this building and then land on top of the industrial garbage can, and then hoist himself up onto the fire escape, pull himself up, and then run up the stairs, and then run onto the roof of the building. But the thing is I would probably, in order to finish this particular animation, I would probably have to draw another background which would represent the rooftop of the building. And And like I said, I was thinking of, you know, there being a helicopter show up. And the idea is, he's gonna take down the helicopter. But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I already have this guy jump off this warehouse's awning and land on a cop and survive, and jump this semi-unrealistic distance to land on the cop and fling the police officer across the street. I already have that pretty much animated at this point. But I just... the idea of the helicopter and him running up a fire escape to attack the helicopter just seems like, yes, this man has no fear, and there is nothing that can kill him. And it's just like, that, I don't know if I like that idea. So, I really do firmly believe that inside of a story or an animation or whatever, there needs to be some sort of limitations to the main character, so that you know that the main character can die, and that way when he defeats adversity, or if he's defeated by adversity, it really means something. Like if he just seems like a godlike being throughout the entire time that you're telling the story, or throughout the entire time that of the animation, be the animation something like 1 minute long, or, you know, a full hour's the feature movie length type of animation, regardless of how long it is, if throughout the full duration it seems like your character is just godlike, regardless of, like, if he loses when he's facing off against adversity, it won't be believable. And once he wins against adversity, if you portrayed your character as being godlike and nothing can hurt him, it still won't seem believable. So if your character winds up being godlike inside of your story, then really, no matter what you do, whether your main character wins or loses, you still fail, basically. So you really need to be careful about that, especially if you don't, if you're not working with like a professional screenwriter or something like that. You really need to be careful about that. Just and be aware. Okay, so here's the implied background here, where I'm just kind of drawing the outline of these buildings off in the distance. There's no real true perspective being considered. I am using the fisheye perspective assistant tools while I'm doing this, but there came a point where it was just like, okay, my lines are not going to the right assistant, so I just kind of grabbed some of the material that I had already drawn and flipped it, and then started and basically copied and pasted it, flipped it, and moved it over to the edge, and that helped me finish the rest of it. And you need to be careful with that. You don't want there to be a predictable pattern to things when you do that sort of thing. But in the end, I feel like, you know, by and large, it looks like a cityscape that looks somewhat like New York or Chicago or whatever, what have you. Yeah, so you see here, I'm starting to kind of like get rid of some of the stuff that looks kind of hokey, and you see me just kind of copy, paste, flip, and such like that to get this looking just right, and all that good stuff. And then I start working on the parking lot, and there was a lot of decision making needing to take place. I needed to move my fisheye perspective assistant, and I had to keep kind of redrawing things a little bit. I needed to kind of decide, okay, so the length of a car at this position should be about this long, and then I'd see, you know, it doesn't really fit with the context of the rest of the scene, so I kept adjusting it a little bit, but in the end I settled with something. And like I said in a previous video within the Road Back to Opentoonz series, Okay, so things that happen to be in a row will eventually change their angle and start pointing towards you and stuff like that. Now, this is a prime example of that. Here we have parking spaces, and the further and further to the left I go, you can actually see that these parking spaces aren't, they're still aligned with one another, but they're not always going to be at a 90 degree, like basically parallel to your shoulders. There comes a point where, since curvilinear perspective is a swivel action, you can see that eventually these parking spaces actually start pointing a little bit more towards you. There's never any point where they actually full on point at the camera or you inside of this particular drawing, but they do start to kind of curve towards you, and you'll see that. There also comes a point where the entire parking space isn't able to fit inside of the canvas. I mean, the edge of the canvas basically cuts off the majority of the parking space. And so what I did is I split the parking space in half, and then basically still was able to use measurement lines to measure the length or the width, the distance of each parking space from one another, even though the full parking space wasn't visible due to the edge of the canvas. And so everything that you've seen so far with these parking spaces has been done with my guideline layer. So these are just guides that will help me actually finish this off. And so now I'm actually doing the refinements at this point. And so at first, right now, I'm just drawing basically the skeleton of what they are. Just drawing just one line to represent them, and then I put some thickness to the parking spaces, and then proceed from there. And then later on, actually much later in the week, I realized, hey, you know what? I forgot about the lamp posts. I forgot about them. And so I went back to Opentoonz, took a screenshot of the lamp post that I drew, and see, it's on the screen right now. And so I blew it up a little bit, made it bigger, and then you see me actually use, I forgot what the name of the tool is, but basically it makes it so that it mirrors what you're doing. Yeah, you see it right here. So I'm drawing a line, but basically on the other side of this mirror, it's drawing a line on the other side of it. And so that this takes out a lot of work for me, and I don't have to guess, okay, well, is it truly like symmetrical? I mean, it already works out all the symmetrical details for me. And at this point, I went ahead and disabled it. And I'm not really too concerned about, oh, this is tracing or something like that. Primarily because I'm the one who drew this lamp to begin with. So I mean, I'm just tracing over stuff that I drew to begin with. But anyways, so in the end, I feel like the lamp wound up looking pretty good. And by and large, I used some guidelines to kind of measure out how these lamp posts are going to appear as they extend out towards the horizon. And after I start really liking how it looks, I start looking at the context of the rest of the scene, and I realize, ooh, you know what? Maybe these lamp posts are a little too short. And so I go ahead and blow them up a little bit again, and then kind of adjust their positioning with the exact same guidelines, with the guideline layer that I had created previously. So yeah, so at this point, I'm creating the guidelines that I use throughout the entire process, and so I'm just kind of figuring out where the position of each one is going to be, and all that good stuff. I copy paste, and I decided to copy and paste from the largest version of the lamp post every single time, because it's the highest resolution of all of them. And so it's best to when you're going to shrink or blow things up bigger with the transforming tools available, it's best that you work with the highest quality image every time to do that. Anyways, guys, this video is coming to a close. There's a tiny bit left to the video. If you liked the video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you didn't, please like, share, and subscribe anyways. And have a great day.